Hello Flight Sim fans, and welcome to this VFR flight to Mount St. Helens Volcanic National Park. And we're also going to fly east from Mount St. Helens to Mount Adams, which is another volcano. In flight we'll be able to see Mount Rainier to the north, and we'll also be able to see Mount Hood to the south, which are also volcanoes. We will land at Columbia Gorge Regional, also known as the Dalles, which is along the it's in the Cascades. I don't know what river it is. Along the Columbia River. So just buckle up and we'll get started here. So I'll go ahead and get our master switch turned on here. We'll turn our beacon on. Fuel pump. Maybe we got sure we got some fuel flow there. There we go. The needle's moving. We have fuel. Magnetos both on. Mixture enrich. Alright, the aircraft is started. We go ahead and turn our nav lights on. Strobe on. Taxi. We're not going to turn taxi on because this is a private airfield, private grass airfield. We'll go ahead and turn our avionics on. We're going to clear this flight plan. Enter yes, and we're going to fly. Let's go ahead and put Columbia Gorge Regional in. So it's KDLS. So DLS. Come on, damn it, mouse. Stay with me here. Okay, so we got that in there. And we'll engage it later. So let's go ahead and get it in the air. I'm just going to kick the flaps down on that. We're not going to need them, but I hope we're not going to need them. So here we go. And a little bit of rudder in here. There's 65 knots. I'm going to fly up this valley to Mount St. Helens. Now, if you're not familiar with Mount St. Helens, Mount St. Helens erupted in March of 1980. Killing 57 people, including one volcanologist. In that eruption, the whole north side of the mountain just almost evaporated. So, as you see here, as we turn a little northeast up this little valley as we continue to climb, once we get to the north side of Mount St. Helens, which is almost visible right here on the left hand side of the screen, the whole face of that mountain is gone. It's completely caved in, carved out from the explosion. So I'm going to go ahead and raise those flaps and continue to climb. Now the Cascades in the continental United States, the Cascades has the greatest per capita of volcanoes found in the continental United States. So you have Mount St. Helens, which is still active. You have Mount Rainier, which is active, which is further to north. You have Mount Adams, which is active. Mount Hood, which is active. And then you have the Three Sisters, which are just south of Mount Hood, which is a volcanic range. There's 3 volcanic peaks that are called the Three Sisters. And in another flight, I will fly to Mount Hood and the Three Sisters. But in this flight, we're going to primarily focus on Mount St. Helens. And then we might fly over to Mount Adams, which is only 30 miles to the east. And then down to, back down to Columbia Gorge. I'm gonna go ahead and just pitch up for 80 knots rather, and climb. Then I'll go ahead and once we get up around 7,000 feet, I'll go ahead and engage the autopilot so we can focus more on the visuals. So this is Mount St. Helens, right off to the right, just on the other side of my compass. So let me just go ahead and set up a little bit more in the cockpit here. So right here is the south face of Mount St. Helens. It's a beautiful view of the Cascades mountain range as we continue to climb. So we can just orbit around. Now, I did fly out of Whiskey November 10, which is Mount St. Helens Aero Ranch. That is a private airfield, just I think it's like 13 miles or something like that from Mount St. Helens. Got a little bit of a cold. I'm looking for a little bit more info on SkyVector. As I can see, there's Mount St. Helens. So off to our right is, out of our right window is Swift Reservoir, and we just flew over Yale Lake, which is right back there behind us. Continue to fly towards Mount St. Helens. Oh, I don't know what that was. A little bit of a frame issue here with OBS. So it seems to have settled down now. May not. So I found I've liked flying in the Cascades. The terrain is beautiful. I mean, the mountains and everything like that. You just can't beat it for those mountains. So I don't really fly in the Rockies. But I do like flying in the Cascades. So if you look back north of Mount St. Helens, you can nearly see, this is Mount Rainier, I do believe. And then over here to our right, if we look out the window, actually look outside, That is Mount Adams, which is another volcano. Mouse always wants to just slide up to the other side. So we're going to fly a little closer to the actual volcano itself. And I am pretty sure that is Mount Rainier dead ahead of us, off in the distance. This right here. Okay, so we're getting up about 7,000 feet. I'm going to go ahead and set my heading bug for north-ish. And keep our altitude here at 7,000. Autopilot, altitude, and heading. And autopilot. There we go. Autopilot is engaged. Because I'm going to climb back down to 7,000 feet. I'm going to throttle back a little bit. Now these are part of the Total River, the north and south forks of the Total River over here. This would be the lava, the ash and lava field left over from Mount St. Helens, the eruption. This over here would be Mount St. Helens Volcanic National Park, I believe. And here's the volcano next to us. And we're going to go ahead and turn right to about 4 or 5 degrees. So this is Spirit Lake. There was a man, Harry R. Truman, no relation to Harry S. Truman, who had a cabin and had lived on Spirit Lake all his life. He was buried under 300 feet of rubble when this whole face of this mountain blew out. If you look at the pictures of it, it just shows it in frame by frame, this whole mountain just blowing out over here. So all this to our left is all lava and ash flow from the volcano all the way over this ridge line here. If we look right, we can now see the volcanic crater and what's left of Mount St. Helens north face. This would be still the lava flow and ash flow and debris from Mount St. Helens. So yeah, as we look back down into the cockpit, there's the remains of Mount St. Helens. Now volcanologist and there's a ham radio operator, both killed. And here they were probably the first 2 people killed in the eruption. They were both killed by the pyroclastic flow. And now we'll go ahead and make our turn to the east to Mount Adams. Of course, we're not going to get close to it. We're just going to get close enough to see it. I mean, we can see it now, but see some of the features. Maybe not all the features. I might save Mount Adams for another time. I probably will. So, if we look out the airplane now, we have Mount Adams, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens. I do believe that down there might be Mount Hood. Actually, Mount Hood right there. That is Mount. Where'd it go? I can't see anymore. It's Mount Hood is down here. You'll be able to see it better once we get closer to Columbia Gorge. So let's go ahead and head towards Columbia Gorge now. So direct to, enter. Let's turn this to GPS and nav. So there's Mount Adams. If you want to fly there, you can take off from Whiskey November 10, fly northeast to Mount St. Helens, then turn east, northeast to Mount Adams. Actually, I'm looking for a closer airfield, somewhere closer to Mount St. Helens. Southwest Washington Regional. Portland International to the south. Probably Portland International might be closer. Let's look. Let's go back to flight plan. Actually, let's just look on the map here. So here we are at Mount St. Helens. Here's Mount Adams, Mount Hood. We're flying to here. It's 43 miles. Now let's just fly back to Whiskey November 10. So let's just go ahead and clear that waypoint. Enter. And we're going to fly back to Whiskey November 10. Which might take me one or two tries. I'll fly over it because I've never landed there. I've always taken off from there, but I've never landed there. So it might be a little bit of an interesting landing, since I normally don't land on grass airfields. So swing back to the south side of Mount St. Helens. I think the challenging thing is going to be is actually finding this airport or air ranch, this little grass airstrip. I think there was another one like Whiskey November 52 or something like that, 52. I think that's Sutton. There's several private airstrips up and around the Swift Run and Yale Lake area. I'm trying to pull up some information. So I usually use Sky Vector on a separate monitor for flight planning, and I also have Flight Plan Go on a tablet. So I use really both because the tablet is actually showing me a moving map of my X-Fan 11 layers. So I think we're going to have to turn down here. Yep, I'm flying about 120 knots. I can probably slow down, but I'm not. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop down here into Yale Lake here, and the runway is going to be to the right, and we're just going to look for it without the GPS. So it's a little chancy, but go ahead and disengage the autopilot, throttle back, and bleed off some altitude here. And now we're going to bleed off a lot more altitude than this, so I'm correct, it's either right over here or right over there. Bring it back to idle. thinking it's right over here. Actually, I think it's right there. Yep, there it is right there. Try not to gain a lot of speed. This is my first official crash strip landing. As a matter of fact, like I said, I generally don't land on grass strips. Hoping with X-Plane 11 they actually release a decent bush plane. Not with X-Plane 7, but maybe Current Auto or somebody like that. So there is the airstrip there. Go ahead and throw some flaps in. There's the first notch. And there's the airstrip. Okay. Put another notch of flaps in. Gotta make it over these wires here. So it's gonna be a pretty steep approach. Because I'm doing this with the weather disabled, it would probably be a lot trickier in fog and wind and everything else here. Still gotta go over these wires here. Probably should have came in the other direction, but in a real world situation, that's probably, well, I don't know, just things run. Alright, throttle back to idle. And come in, it's still a steep angle. We're going to float. And there's the flare. And there's touchdown. And we are on the ground, and we should be able to stop by the end of the runway. And we went off the end of the runway a little bit. But considering our approach, that's pretty good. Taxi back over here a little bit. And as we go ahead and engage the parking brakes and shut the plane down, I'd like to go ahead and at this moment and thank you all for joining me on this flight to Mount St. Helens. Have a great day.